eventually.
Oh, we're recording now. Yes. So my point is related to behavior, but I actually didn't want to make a point about having to model it because that's just very challenging, but rather with the simpler methods that we are using, where behavior is kind of fixed in the model or a condition, we should communicate that clearly, because non-modelers tend to want to hear what is assumed about policy, whereas in the models, we assume what the behavior is.
So you're saying that that should be communicated much more clearly.
Yeah. Yeah, I find it very tempting. I'm often very tempted to speak in terms of policy, whereas the model can only predict in terms of effective behavior.
So is the point, or the estimation point in that we just need to be more clear about quantifying the uncertainty?
No, it's about communicating uncertainty.
Yeah. Okay, communicating uncertainty based on the and be clear about the assumption that give rise to the uncertainty.
Yeah.
But I'm not even convinced. Well, you are all doing the modeling, so you can tell me it's true. But are the models actually modeling behavior and not policy? Because my impression early on was that they were modeling policy, i.e., no contacts between different groups or whatever, when in fact the behavior would not be that.
Okay, yeah, there's a distinction between reality and the simulation, of course, and whether the simulation reflects reality well or not. But when you say modeling policy, it implies, to me anyway, and to the people that I try to explain this to, if you say we're modeling policy, it implies that you kind of model the way that people react to that policy, which is not the way, because actually the policy that you are simulating is, well, there's this effect, the contact rate is 0 or decreased, but that's actually just a quantification of behavior. It's a static quantification of behavior within the model. How that is achieved by the policy, the model doesn't care about. So I would argue that the model actually simulates behavior in a static sense, which is not realistic, but that's actually what we are assuming. We assume that people reduce their contacts to a certain degree. Whether that happens under a particular policy, well, the model can't tell us that.
I think it's an important distinction there. You kind of put it all together into one modeling cap. I think behavior, policy transferred into behavior and modeled can be done better in a more complicated, what you call complicated, more stratified model that accounts. So an agent-based model, a network model, a branching process model, not a simple mass balance OD. I think it's really difficult. And I think that's why maybe, Valerie, when you say, when we just reduce the number of contacts from 13 to 5 because we imposed a strict social distancing, that is not really modeling behavior. That's really modeling policy. Whereas if you say in the community you reduce this much because people stopped going to the shops and the contacts in the community was reduced by this much, that is a more thorough modeling of behavior.
Yes, but there's still a I suppose a distinction of whether it's just, we'll assume that this number goes down, this parameter is halved, which is a sort of, fairly arbitrary thing.
Yeah.
Or whether it's based on real information and data.
Well, there is behavioral modeling, which I hope takes into account real information.
Well,
and how people actually respond to policies.
They do. The sort of Danielle. I think Danny wanted to say something. I would say yes, there is.
Yeah, I mean, we don't just eliminate contacts like that. So there is information. Of course, there is never the information that you really want in the shape you want at the level that you want. But for instance, we do that, and Paul can elaborate on that. We can use this information in our models to the information on the Google mobility. the Google Mobility gives you some data about how people go about particular type of activities in different contexts. And then we have information on the Department of Education, which tells us when the schools are open and all the rest of it. So you can actually use information of this time to up, sort of increase or decrease maybe some baseline measure of interaction. And mathematical modelers typically use the polymod, which is now ancient. But there've been other new studies, like the BBC study that Julia Gog was involved with. There's been more recent COVID specific kind of surveys. I mean, nothing is perfect. All of these are not really designed, but there is information that you can use.
But many of those, I mean, certainly if you think about something like the mobility data, I would have thought that there I mean, Luke was making the distinction between policy and behavior.
Yes.
Whether you were modeling policy or behavior. There's a comment somewhere in the Slack, Danny, in case you missed it.
Yeah, probably I will.
And I think.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously,
but anyway, the point is, sorry, I started to look for it and stopped talking. But all I was really going to say was that something like the mobility data is presumably modelling behaviour,
yes,
rather than policy. But whereas some of the other things are more policy, and things like polymod, I guess, are.
That's behavior.
It's behavior, but it's some approximation there too.
Oh, everything is an approximation. You never get what you want.
Sure, but I mean, at least mobility is current. But on the other hand, you don't really know about whether they're real contacts, I suppose.
No, of course not, because I mean, this is just how people interact, about the type of contact they come. No, of course. I mean, there's been some London School they call it comics, and then there's been some other smaller survey driven by, I think, Bristol or Exeter. But I mean, everyone is trying to kind of do some sort of survey of how people interact. But
the link one wants to make is the link between policy and behavior. I mean, has anybody got a grip on the way in which an applied policy actually affects behavior? Presumably typically not in the way it was intended to.
Exactly. And that's why we need to say or explain, when we say we are modeling policy, we're actually assuming that this policy leads to a specific behavior. That was the distinction that I was trying to.
But we need to understand what actually happens in the world.
That
too. And that's going to be time varying, presumably. I mean, people's behavior is not just going to be static, it's going to evolve as depending on all sorts.
Yes, I think we've seen that. Yes.
Yes.
I guess also in this paper we might want to focus on like questions about how well we can estimate the impact of policy or correlate policy with the changes in our estimates of various parameters like contact rates and so on in models. That could be an angle here.
Well, the link that I see with uncertainty in this topic is that people that read modeling studies, or people for whom these studies are relevant, tend to read the modeling as overly certain because it is stated that this or that policy was done, so that must be the truth. But actually, it needs to be more clearly explained that we assume that given this policy, people will behave such and such. So it's about communication of assumption and uncertainty. I think that is the issue. And I agree about all the social science stuff that we should include, but I'm not sure how we tie that up into an uncertainty story.
Again, I think that sort of comes down to this issue that we've got with this paper, that we haven't quite decided what the focus is, focus is, whether it, I agree with you what you're saying about uncertainty totally, but also we have spoken about the idea that we're trying to we're looking at estimation and also expert elicitation, which
I guess for the benefit of those who weren't here right at the beginning, I mean, I think what we said was that last week there was going to be some evolution of this, ideally, of this document, and TJ and Ian had sort of undertaken to have some chat about that today. Now, neither of them, I mean, TJ sent apologies. I don't know about Ian and whether he'll appear later, but we haven't got either of them with us, so we don't know whether those discussions took place. There's no updated document, but so we're a little bit without them. We're not quite sure where things have got to. You're mute.
I don't think things have progressed very much. Yeah.
I mean, they had fixed a time to meet today, but I'm not sure whether it actually, in the event, whether it happened.
I sent an email to TJ, but he hasn't replied. Well,
he sent me an apology this morning saying that something had cropped up that he, and he was sending apologies and he might not be back in time for the meeting. So I suspect that might have affected all his day.
Yeah, we haven't been very useful to discuss with the whole group now how to restructure the document, right?
Mm. Well, I mean, we can obviously discuss it as it is, and try and.
But that might be a little bit like, then we might have to discuss it again after they have made the point.
I know. I don't know whether there's any way. I'm not quite sure what they were planning to do, but what we were saying was we've got, I think, 15 bullet points here at the moment in the version that Danny finished tweaking last week. And presumably, my impression was that some of that was sort of introductory or could go in an introduction, whereas other parts needed to be treated as challenges and with saying more about. And I don't know if people have thoughts about how to do that. But that may, as Jasmina says, that may be what Ian and TJ were talking about, in which case we don't want to, reinvent the wheel.
I might even go too close to suggesting that maybe we should just wait on them and then have this meeting. I mean, as much as it's nice to talk with.
Sure.
Okay.
Shall we adjourn until we know what we're talking about?
I wrote to Ian, but I didn't get a reply on Slack yet. So
I think we need to ask them for the structure, even if it's just an outline of headings, and then we could, if we know that and we agree to meet next week, we could try to each contribute something towards editing things under this structure. But I think having asked them for a structure, I think we have to get it before we can go further, really.
I think so.
Yeah.
Sorry, I should have been a little bit more proactive, but the beginning of the week is always a mess for us. We've got so many things to do, and we end up always overestimating the time that we've got to do anything.
It's always, well, of course we moved the meeting from Thursday to Wednesday, which made it worse in that respect, and Peter isn't here anyway this week, so
yes, exactly. When Thursday is better. Yeah.
Well, let's I'll put something in on the Slack channel to TJ and Ian saying, if they can upload whatever discussion they've had or are having, ideally a day or two in advance of next week's meeting, then we can all try and make some comments on it, so that when we meet next week, we're a bit further on than just having the document. Does that sound
Yes, it does.
Yes,
Can you send the link for the Slack channel?
Yes, I should be able to. Let's. Today. You should be. You should be a participant on it, but
Yes, I think I am.
I can't see. Dennis, you're always good at this. What's the?
Sorry.
Don't worry, I'll find it. Don't worry.
Well, I can simply. I need to get. Yeah, sorry. I need to. I'm having Luke's problems, or at least maybe Luke's problems. I'm not sure. I need to get on to the Slack a different way in order to see the participants and so on. I can't see it from where I am.
Oh, you want? So you're just trying to see if Danny's on Slack?
No, I think she is. She just wants. She can't find it. So can we?
Danny,
I can send
yes,
you a direct.
you're definitely on the channel. I can see you on the channel, Danny.
Danny, I can just send you a direct message now, and then it should come to your email, and then you click it there.
Yeah, that's exactly what I.
That will be perfect. Thank you, Jasmina.
I'm gonna write hi.
That's enough.
There you go. I've done it.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much.
Okay.
So I'll put some stuff. I'll put some stuff for Ian and TJ in Slack, and hopefully we can make some progress during the coming week.
Are we going to keep this time every week now?
Can we make it 5:30? For me, it's
very difficult.
5.
I mean, do we need an hour and a half? Maybe 5:30 to 6:30 is okay.
Well, I'd probably have to leave early if we start at 5:30.
No, if it means you're not coming, no, Phil. And then we'll keep it at 5, and then I'm trying to run away from wherever I am.
I do appreciate it's difficult. I mean, I don't know what time we can do that works for everybody. We hope this was, a reasonable compromise, but.
Should we say 5:15?
That sounds like a very reasonable compromise.
Well, then we can go on for a little bit more than an hour if we need to. We can call it 5:15 to 6:30. There's a compromise on length too.
Okay.
And are we able to use the same Zoom link, or will that change?
I think we just use the same.
We'll check with Kara, but I think yes.
I think that's fine. So then we just turn up slightly later.
Okay.
Now everyone will be confused when it's 15 past the hour. It's fine. I think I'm joking. I think it will be fine.
Yeah. Well, we need to tell Kira anyway, so she can put it in the bulletin, so in case anybody else decides to join us.
Yeah.
But,
otherwise, they wait there for a quarter of an hour, and then they don't find anyone, and they go away. Yes.
Yeah. Oh yes, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
all right. Thanks very much.
Sorry for today.
Okay. See you then. Thanks for coming.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.